back to a time, maybe you're somewhere at a restaurant or you're maybe in a meeting and you're sharing, swapping stories, even sharing your perspective on different things, different topics. And then you notice in your awareness that you're saying things that aren't really authentically like how you feel. Maybe you say something slightly negative about someone else, or you make an opinion or you share an opinion that's like an extreme polarity. And then you reflect later on, you're like, why did I say that? That's not even how I feel. That's not even like my reality. It's so funny that happened. Why did I do that? And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think a lot of times when we are producing dance and we are evoking movement in our body, we can go into this space where we're not actually being led by our own selves as the director. We're actually being led by like an external focus. So maybe there's someone else in the room where you envision the perception that someone else has of you, or maybe the song comes on and it's not really totally in alignment with where you're at, and you just like override your system and it's like, okay, here's the song, it's like this, so here I go. Or maybe you have a teacher in your space and you're not able to actually listen to what your body wants to communicate, and you're just kind of being given some sort of focus, and then you take that focus on as your own, and all of a sudden you're doing movement that maybe is not what you need in the moment, but you're doing it because you're interacting with your environment, with other people. So the whole point of this video is to encourage you not to fix this, but just to become aware of moments that you kind of override your own system. You bypass and you stop listening, and then you go into this switch where you're just producing, and it becomes this place where you kind of lose your sense of self. It happens all the time, and you lose your sense of self, and you're not quite sure upon reflection and hindsight how that happened and why you're not able to hear your own needs and hear the intuition that's kind of guiding you to maybe your movement needs to be softer today, maybe it should have been harder, maybe you gave up on yourself, maybe you pushed too hard, and just being aware of the fact that that's happening to us all the time. In dance, when we lose the central compass and we start listening to these outside nudges, whether it's real or imagined, we get, as you can see, lost. And then we are just riding someone else's wave rather than riding our own wave. And this is, there's value in that too. There's no problem with overriding maybe what is at your core, what you should be focused on or what you should be doing or need to be doing when it comes to movement and creativity. But it's really cool when we start to become aware of it, and then we can actually use that information to either realize it's a conscious choice that we're making, or use that awareness moment to bring ourselves back to our own compass and become the director again. So a couple of examples in my own life where that happens. There was or has been photo shoots in my life where, there's the vision or the preference that the photographer has. There's what I came in there expecting my needs to be or what I wanted to share. And then maybe there's even, more outside influences, other people in the room that are going to shoot or did just shoot. There might be some sort of creative director or producer, and they have their own lens and their own expectations. And it's really difficult to find you in all of that mess. So another example, you go into a class, maybe it's a choreography class, and you quickly realize that maybe the direction they're going or the intensity is not matching where you feel you can actually produce at, in a way that's kind of honoring, what you wanted to get out of the class. Third example, maybe you're in your own private space and you want to film your movement. Maybe you even get into a zone where you know, that beautiful place where you forget the camera's there, but the camera's still evoking, you know, a communication with your body. But then all of a sudden, some freaking Instagrammer, you know, pops into your head, and then you are thinking about your movement in the imagined reality of what you think they think about your movement. And all of a sudden you're making different decisions, different choices. And you get done, your body hurts, you're like, what the hell? I just wanted to flow, and now it was like in a handspring and my back's feeling vulnerable today. What am I doing? So this is the override. This is when the external focus takes away from the collaborative fact that there should be, you know, a balance or an interplay between, you know, your internal directive and the fact that it is a shared communication. So there's going to be external directives. So here's a couple tips from me, and hopefully we're spiraling back to the purpose of this video on how you can get back to the compass that resides within you. Obviously, and this is going to feel like common sense, breath work. And of course, it's going to take that aware moment where you realize you've lost something, or you've traveled away from something, and then you can use the breath, not unlike you use the breath in meditation, to kind of pull yourself back to that center. And you can also use that with an intention that you set. If you actually used a word or a phrase and that formed in your mind, or you wrote it down before you started moving, that can become a really nice visual or mental marker, not unlike the breathing does, to bring you back. If your focus for today was softness, and this is not to say that you might start there and then find yourself in a new direction that's in alignment, but when you get out of alignment and you realize that you're still craving softness, or there's a thread that softness is still what you need, but you're over here being aggressive with your body, then you can remember that word and bring it back. So in essence, that can be like a mantra, that can be like reminding yourself of the intention. The other thing is that, hey, you might go off track, and that's okay. Maybe that was meant to happen. And then you can use this outer, after, post reflection time at the end of your movement. Maybe it's when you're just sitting there stretching or cooling down and you're checking in with what you experienced and what you did. Or maybe if you are someone who films your practice for various reasons, that you're looking at that film and you're not just looking at the product, like, ooh, my line, ooh, this, ooh, that, but you're actually looking at the energy and the experience of you as you're watching your body, and notice what the train was and where you went. And using that as an awareness tool to start to recognize the patterns that you exhibit when you get into a practice. And those patterns can be a controlled state that really is unwarranted, that we don't actually want to be driven by those patterns. And so we can kind of watch ourselves on film or play back our experience in kind of a mental recap, and start to wake up to those patterns of how we abandon what our core focus was, or we thought it should be for that day. So all of this is super fluid, and it's going to change, and you might find that you deviate from where you initially set your purpose for the movement of that day, that moment, and that might have been intentionally good, that might be good, or in this case, when I'm speaking about this video, is you actually derailed, and you derailed because you were either influenced by your environment, or influenced by what happens a lot, this external perception of what other people are going to think about your movement, what you think they need or want to see, and then you're trying to meet this need that really isn't reality. Even if you really feel like you know what you want your audience or your peers to see. Of course, especially if you're someone who's thinking about the branding perspective, that's going to matter. But in essence, what I'm speaking to is the fact that I'm seeing, a lot of people potentially, and I hope I'm not making assumptions here, but potentially consistently overriding themselves, derailing from what they probably came in the room to do. And I think that there's this sense of not trusting yourself, and then by kind of derailing or letting yourself be led somewhere else, not in a way that you're choosing consciously, we're actually not cultivating trust in the self. And to be able to communicate clearly, to know our boundaries, to have a sense of self and identity as a mover, we have to have trust. And we build that trust by continuing to honor the inner compass. Even if we're still working on the fact that fear and other kinds of blocks are still a part of that compass, we still have to work with where we are. So if we're still in a very comparative mindset, but we know we don't want to live as a creator in a comparative mindset, we have to be working on what is my inner guidance system telling me, and then working with that as a place of where you are, not being in denial of that, to build and cultivate more trust. So we have a lot of personal responsibility in our practice, and that requires some reflection and some awareness work. And you can do this through movement, you can do this through observation, you can do this through writing, you can do this through hiring someone who has a really good eye and can assist you in that process. But there are a million ways to get more aware so that we are actually in control, or at least in a flow that feels really satisfying and feels really self-directed, which in essence is where the juiciness of creativity, self-generated creativity, lies. So I went on a couple tangents. I'm looking at the time code. This is a long video, but hopefully you found something useful in here. And if you're curious what I'm holding here, this is a candle quartz. I used to be really obsessed with candle quartz, and it's really good for a coming together energy. So that's why I was holding it today. Sending you love, you guys. Drop a comment, please like, please share. That really helps me get this channel out there, and I really just want to be of service to all movers of all types. Love you guys. Bye.